I'm here with Sean Rush of Rush Agency, owner agent out of Frisco, Texas. Sean, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate you giving me a space to just chat.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You mind just telling me a little bit about your agency and kind of what you do there?
Yeah. So, Rush Agency is actually a family agency. We've been around since 1983. My father started the agency. I took it over in 2023, January of 2023, and I've got to navigate all of the fun stuff since then. But we specialize kind of in your traditional home and auto insurance. And we focus mainly, you said Frisco, North Texas. So,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Yeah, and I sorry if you didn't say it there. Where's your kind of operating area? Texas or any other states or?
We write a little bit in other states, Oklahoma, Colorado. We have some clients that are either snowbirds, where they may kind of migrate between the states depending on the time of year, or they just have like a quick weekend getaway in Oklahoma. So, Frisco being in North Texas, it's just a few hours up the road, Oklahoma.
Perfect. Yeah, not too far away in Wichita, Kansas, like we talked about before. So
A little
Mm,
further, but yeah, not
a
too
little
far.
bit, a little bit. Yeah. um, so yeah, like you said, Rush Agency goes back to 1983.
Right.
Um, what does carrying that legacy forward mean to you?
Yeah. Well, it's it's my father's, it's his hard work over these last 40 years before I took the agency over. It was me growing up and just seeing him every weekend, every moment that we weren't doing something. I used to hang around the office as a kid, play on the computer, help him file you know fi- literal files. um I was doing the yard upkeep at the office outside. So I kind of grew up around the business. I saw the good and the bad, how insurance really helps people, but I also heard about some of the challenging aspects of it. So I guess what it means for me is kind of carrying that torch and trying to serve the same needs that my father did, but trying to do it in a way that appeals to what people want and expect, in 2025.
Absolutely. Yeah, the family businesses. I have personal experience, family businesses too, and it holds a special place in my heart. Growing up around a business, I think I don't know about you, but I feel really lucky to be able to grow up around that environment and then be able to show my daughter the same kind of thing too. It's a really special thing. I think that some people might overlook.
Yeah, it's a different experience versus someone like my wife. She grew up where the father was in the corporate industry,
Hmm.
and just it's a whole different beast. Yeah, just seeing how there's a lot of extras that you chip in. Like there's really no days off, and maybe you get a little free labor sometimes from your kids and extended family, but
Yep.
it's a different experience. It's rewarding in a different way,
Yeah.
equity being the big thing, that you're able to build. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that too. And I feel like, I don't know with your experience, but being around the service business, I think it really helped help me understand like what it means to be a good provider to a client or like provide a good service and how important that is. Not only like, of course, it makes us feel great. It
Mhm.
just works perfectly, but that's how you grow a business, right? And that's how um, you prove to other people and just keeps on growing and growing.
Yeah, I think service is probably the biggest thing that help differentiate small businesses over these big corporations.
Hmm.
And just being able to connect with clients on a more personal level, remember who they are, what they do, really drill down and take the time. Because when you work with these big companies, typically, like they can't, you didn't. you're always working with someone different, right? Someone picks up the phone. You never talk to the same rep every time. It's
Yeah.
someone experienced, and you're going to have a different, varying experience with that person. So, small business, you get that personal rapport and relationship. So that really helps you cater to what they need.
Yeah. Feel a real sense of investment
Mhm.
uh, in that relationship. I totally agree. So you have deep family roots in the insurance world.
Mhm.
What stayed the same, and what's had to change in how you serve clients now?
Wow. Yeah, I could spend hours talking about this, but what's really changed is how you communicate with clients. I feel like we're asked and tasked with communicating with clients on where they or how they want to be communicated with. It used to just
Yeah.
be, hey, pick up the phone, have a phone call, or you just had open office hours and people regularly just walked in the front door and asked to make a payment or they needed a new policy down the street and just, they heard this is a place to get insurance. And that style has not completely gone away. There are still people that expect that, but that used to be a large percentage, probably 20% of the your clientele would all be face to face, and the other you would call, leave a voicemail, and they get back to you the next day. And I just feel like today you have to be available in your office for those older clients that expect it. You have to call those clients that only talk on the phone, typically older. But then you have the younger clients that only, won't pick up your phone calls, won't
Yeah.
respond to your voice, won't even set up a voicemail, right? So you have to be able to
Yeah.
text them.
Yeah.
And then you got your older millennials, Gen Z, and they want an email typically.
Yeah.
And, so it's challenging because you have to communicate with them. Every client, you don't really like you can have that relationship, but people's preferences are even changing. So people that may have traditionally preferred one form of communication, now they prefer an opposite. So we have to communicate along all of those channels to make sure we're actually connecting with our clients and getting hold of them. So it's been a change.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I've seen a couple agencies that I was working with start to implement more texting, maybe
Yeah.
even texting first, depending on what the outreach was or inbound, and like see the numbers go way up. Of course, it depends on the type of product and the age group and everything, but really trying to understand and meet those clients where they're at is so important. I couldn't agree more, especially now than ever.
Yeah. So it's texting is definitely probably becoming more than the more like default modes for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Spamming just seems like spam calls has just skyrocketed. Email, spam skyrocketed. Open your mailbox. The people that do so much
Yeah.
solicitations in there. I mean, I remember when and this was in the mid 2000s, apartment complex, and I checked my mail once a month, maybe
Yeah.
only if I was looking for something.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, it's really evolved. But yeah, text message, it seems like that's kind of hitting all of the demographics. Even older clients are getting more used to and attuned with texting and checking their text. So, but it can seem kind of personal sometimes to send a text.
Yeah.
And there's the laws out there. You have to be careful about texting people that aren't your clients and, aren't open to receiving texts. There can be consequences. So,
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so, how would you walk clients through rate hikes or even
mm,
denied claims while still building trust?
yeah. Well, I think the biggest problem that you see is you have expectations for a lot of people are up here. A lot of people aren't using their insurance very often. They may use it once or twice every 10 years, maybe longer. And they just simply don't understand how insurance works. And I feel like that's where a lot of the dissatisfaction comes from insurance. People just don't realize how it works. So they may file a claim once every 10 years and maybe it doesn't get paid. And they think that's a bad company or that's a bad policy. And taking the time to walk them through, I really feel like it's kind of when you take a client on, you have to set that precedent, what's really covered, what's not.
Yeah.
And then you have to constantly refresh them. But let's say that you do that, but I mean, there's some clients that just, like I said, they text, you can't explain a whole policy through text, right?
Yeah.
I've sent Loom. I'm not sure if you've heard of Loom, little short
Hmm.
videos that you can send to clients. I'll send those 3 to 5 minutes, and I'll have clients that will never open them. I
I
could
love that.
send like PDFs and abbreviated bullet points about what's covered, what's not covered. I have clients that will never open them. They won't spend the time to come into our office. They won't spend the time to, to look at any material, but they just expect when they file the claim for it to be covered. So it is a hard conversation. If you can set that expectation, you have
Hmm.
expectations up here, but sometimes reality's down here. And that delta, the difference between those two, that's the dissatisfaction that you get. So as soon as you can kind of level expectations and get those on the same page, what you think insurance is, or what it actually, when it's the same point, people typically understand. But when you have a claim denial, the first thing that we typically do is we just have a conversation. What happened? What's going on? Ideally, we want to get ahead of the claim before they file it and say, hey, tell me your story. Like, no judgment here. What happened? And if it's something that's not going to be covered, we don't want to typically put them through that rigmarole that they're going to, talk to an adjuster, have people come out, do an investigation, um, get, you know, get a contractor come out for a bid. And, it costs 6,000 and their deductible's 10,000. So
Yeah.
why did they do all that? So, but when a claim's denied, tell me your story. I want to understand what's going on. Let's make sure there's coverage. And if I believe there is coverage, what's your deductible? Does it exceed your deductible? Let's file. And if we do all that properly, typically we're able to keep them from filing a claim that doesn't need to be filed. So they already know not to file it. But if they do file a claim and there's no coverage and we think there is coverage, we're going to go through the policy and try to understand the language. I've been successful at times and unsuccessful other times of reading the policy language, which this is what most big companies aren't going to do, and really understanding what's there or finding gray areas, right, where the interpretation is a little ambiguous, and pushing that with the adjusters or the adjusting managers, and then
Hmm.
kind of coming to where the client's coming from, where I'm coming from, how we're interpreting it. And I've got some big claims paid that, were originally denied. So that's one of the things, again, we're talking about a small company, a small, family owned, personal relationship, like we feel for those clients that don't have
Yeah.
claims paid. We feel when we lose clients or we can't help clients. When you work with a big company, you're just a number. You really are. You're just a number, and they have no vested interest that your claim is paid if they don't feel like it's black and white, like it should be paid.
Yep.
So we just kind of go through that process. We kind of walk them through all those steps, review the policy, and you know get them to get their expectations in line with reality of what the policy actually covers. That's how we kind of try to build the trust.
I love all that you touched on there. It's so important. Talk to your agent, right? Make sure that you're there for them. You're in their corner. You're in between that big company that doesn't want to pay. Maybe you're there to
Hmm.
make something happen for them. Just like that's why you get a lawyer, right? um, there to help, right? Maybe even a little bit more than lawyers some of the time. But yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think that more people need to really realize that, and that's one of the upsides to going to a broker, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So you mentioned in one of our previous conversations that a lot of clients don't even understand what they're buying some of the time. What's one misconception that really needs clearing up?
Well, so being in North Texas, I would say you see it in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, typically places around the coast. It's coverage for your roof. You want to make sure that you have a coverage for your roof, meaning that the insurance is going to pay something. and B, that you have replacement cost coverage. And last is your deductible. Those are the real big 3 points that's where most people have claims is coming to their roof: wind, tornado, hurricane, hail. And what a lot of people get wrapped up is they think insurance is the game of the best price wins. And I get that from a consumer standpoint. Like, yeah, I want to pay less. And there are value companies out there. There are value offers where a company is just being aggressive, wants new clients, and they'll give you really good coverage for a good price. But typically, your cheaper policies are going to they're going to pay less, or they're not going to pay at all. And it's really hard to get not to get wrapped up in just who's the cheapest. So that's where I think businesses that are ingrained in the community, kind of like my father was for 40 years, where we just can't sell policies that don't pay. We have to work with companies and we have to advise our clients of what's for their best interest or not. And making sure they have replacement costs, they have better deductibles if that's an option, and they cover all of those. They would call them perils: your hurricane, tornado, windstorm, hail. So I've seen people move and not realize they don't have any roof coverage because it's really cheap, or they don't realize that they have what's called actual cash value coverage, and that typically means it's not what your roof is cost to replace; it's what's the life left in that roof. Like, so
Mm,
they say the
yeah.
average roof is 30 years. That's the average life. And the roof is 15 years. They're only going to pay approximately half of what that roof cost. And that's before your deductible. So you've got your deductible and half the roof. So you're going to get a fraction of what it costs to replace that roof.
Yeah. That'd be a really tough bill. Um, yeah, it's really sad to see some of that stuff happen. Have you personally seen some of that before? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen people not understand what their deductibles are. We see it's been kind of a more recent occurrence, kind of storm
Mm,
brewing in Texas specifically. It may be in other states where people are just so stressed about their rates going up and they're moving just to the cheapest policy that they're not realizing that when a big storm comes in, they're not going to get the 30,000 it costs to replace their roof. They may get like six. So now they're on the hook for $24,000 and they have no idea. It's one thing, right, to say like, hey, I'm going to save money. I'm going to be prepared. I know this roof claim or this bill is going to be paid one day by me. So I'm
yeah.
going to prepare for it. But when they have no idea, they think it's the big name brand company that's going to, you know, take care of them. And then they get their settlement check and it's $3,000 or $4,000 and the contractor says it's 30 or 40. They're, yeah, they're in a bad way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're there to help out with that situation and help educate. It's so important. Um, with online carriers promising lower rates,
Mhm.
um, why do you believe the agent model still wins, especially long term? Do you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's probably going to be some kind of melding between the models long term. There's going to be something that kind of gives you a first round of an idea of rates, um, or there maybe be a consultation with the person that's an agent. I think that's just, and that could be 5, 10 years. I don't know, but I think the long term model is taking the efficiency of kind of the online model, but with the personal relationship and accountability of
Yeah.
a personal model and fusing those. So, but to your point about online carriers getting quotes online, auto is typically okay.
Hmm.
If you're shopping online for auto, it's typically the quotes and the coverages are pretty comparable between most companies. We see the difference in rates not very drastic typically.
Mm,
Sometimes it can be, but typically they're somewhat in line. You know, save a few $100 here, or, um, but home is where we're seeing the really big differences between companies. Sometimes 3, $4,000 sometimes between certain companies. And when you go online, because homes are typically people's like largest investment, right? Like you look at people's homes in the United States and their homes can be worth $1 million, multiple millions of dollars that they bought 20, 30 years ago. There's so much more liability on the line, in my opinion, that and each home is so different, and people can just go in and customize their homes and do additions and remodel the bathroom. And there's something that like most people get rid of their car every 10, 12 years, right? Like, can you imagine
Hmm.
everyone had a car that was on average 30, 40 years old, and they're doing all these modifications on them, and um, they expect that that vehicle should be, be able to rebuild the entire vehicle if something happens to it. That's just, it's so hard to figure out all the variables on that. So that's kind of your idea of like why auto doesn't translate to home. So when people go online and get quotes for homes online, because homes are so personal, they're so customizable, the kind of like one fits all approach doesn't really work. And that's typically where an agent would come in. They would ask you questions about your home. They would check in with you occasionally. What are you doing? What's going on? And if you don't have that human interaction, conversation, kind of touching base and modifying and updating, um, it doesn't seem to work. There was let's see, what was it? There was I think it's called the Houston Chronicle. They actually released some information about claims that were denied. They said in Texas, almost 50% of all claims were denied by certain carriers. Unfortunately, the top two were online only carriers for home. So just to kind of show you, they're not having that conversation like I was telling you. When my clients, how I build trust when it comes to claims, they don't have that person to call and like, should I file this claim? Is this covered? What do I do? I don't think, my company denied this claim. I don't think it should be denied. So some of those claims are probably should be paid, but no one is an advocate for them. And then those other instances where they didn't elect to purchase the coverage because no one explained what the coverage was or how it worked. So those are the problems with online carriers.
That is interesting. Yeah, and I can. It, yeah, it is interesting. I'll just leave it at that. You explained it really well.
Well, good. It's
Do
my
you?
job.
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah. Um, do you have a story that really illustrates why good coverage and good advice matter?
Good coverage and good advice matter. Um, I mean, that's a pretty broad question there. Uh, Good coverage matters. I think too many people look at home or auto insurance like I pay this, so I get this in return. And like I said, people are only, using their insurance maybe 5 out of 10 years. Insurance is really a defensive mechanism. I think when people start looking at it as a defensive standpoint and not what I get in return, they start to kind of evaluate insurance from a better place. So insurance is really there to protect you, like in the worst case scenario. Um, and if you have the right coverages, it can almost keep you like safe when the worst case scenario comes. So I'm a big proponent of like umbrella coverage.
Hmm.
And I've got an example. I had a client that they had a classic Corvette they had at a car show, and they had a young male driver. And that young male driver was trying to show off, and they do like this parade of cars where they all kind of come out, and then basically all the guests, everyone that's there, they're lined up on the street, watch each one of these cars go by.
Yeah.
And this young driver was driving this car, and they peeled out to try to show off, and they unfortunately lost control of their vehicle and actually hit some bystanders.
Oh my gosh.
And that's a type of scenario where both of them lawyered up, people that were hit lawyered up, and the
Sure.
client could have potentially been in a really bad position. And they're not in a great position, but because they had the proper auto coverage, because they had umbrella coverage, it's a lot less stressful than it could have been
Mm,
because when your policy, a lot of people think, hey, I have $30,000 worth of coverage for bodily injury. Just give you an example. That's kind of what it is in
mhm,
Texas, the minimum. That means my policy only covers up to 30,000. So that's all they can get. They can only get the $30,000 worth of coverage from me. No, that's what the policy pays, but anything above that, you are personally liable for. You can
mhm.
be
Right.
sued, liens, award, judge can award payments. It could be really, really painful. So when you look at
Absolutely.
umbrella or insurance from a standpoint of, I don't get this policy because I'm going to get these benefits. It's this policy and these benefits are going to defend me from the
Mhm.
worst case scenarios to make sure that my life can go as smoothly as possible. I think just kind of flipping how you look at it and electing that, hey, sometimes paying more, I may not use this, but if I do, if that umbrella policy that covers you for $1 million pays out once, it's going to be more than worth it. The ROI, the
Oh,
return on
yeah.
investment is like, I don't know, 10,000 to one, 100,000 to one. Like typically your umbrella policies cost a few $100s a year, but it's umbrellas are just the extreme case. It could be from water coverage. It could be from um, like your wind coverage for your house. It could be for freeze. It could be for like in 2021, Texas had a crazy freeze, and there were $1 million homes. Their pipes froze, burst, and it flooded their entire homes. People had no electricity, and they abandoned their homes because it wasn't, you couldn't stay there.
No.
And that ended up costing insurance companies hundreds and hundreds it was a multi-billion dollar like for the whole insurance industry in Texas. But um, homeowners sometimes it costs three or $400,000 in a year or more to get back in their home. If they didn't have freeze coverage and that costs an extra three or $400 a year, like, you know, just doesn't work out. You need to really have some of these coverages that you may not use, but if you use them once, it's going to protect you and put you in a good position.
Yeah, hard it's a hard conversation to have, but the financial burden that's put on someone, if like you said, you had a situation where, maybe it isn't even your fault and hit someone or hit another car and they get seriously hurt and hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s later and it's not covered. I mean, it's great if everybody's okay, but financial freedom is so important too, right? Having to pay
Hmm.
these bills for years and years and you can't provide for your family or what have you. Insurance might not be always fun to talk about, but it's really not fun to talk about when you really need it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
How would how do you grow an agency and still make clients feel seen? So like not just another number, not just another person on the list.
Yeah, I mean, you have to scale to a certain degree. You can only scale so much, but having an extra employee there is definitely going to help, but you can't do that forever. Um, so I think having more touches per client definitely helps. It doesn't matter if it's a email or a text, but something that's checking in with all the clients occasionally. There's a lot of systems out there, like we use Levitate as a company that can, social media post, emails. They have an AI assistant in the email to try to make the emails look personal. And they are personal. You want to, you can give them a prompt. Mention the kids. Mention, how's the golf game? It'll put that in the email for you. So you still are thinking of them. You are still, and then it'll shoot them an email, and you can set that up annually. Um, is this to check in when their policies renew? You could
Hmm.
do it 60 days. I think 60 to 90 days before their policies renew are probably better. So they're getting like, hey, hope everything's good, checking in with you. And then you're getting an email 30 days before their policies come up and you're saying,
Hmm.
oh, hey, your policy kind of, because otherwise it seems a little too transactional, you know?
Sure.
And it does some of those emails that are just kind of check in how you're doing, they can really start to take you places where, oh yeah, well, I bought a new classic car. Kind of like,
Right.
and oh, and Jimmy just turned 16 and got his driver's license. And oh, and kind of starts a whole conversation that you can help protect people. And it also is coming from a genuine place. You are remembering these people. It's just trying to make you more efficient with those interactions.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned Levitate. I was going to ask you about it next. So have you been using it for some time now, and you say you really like it? It's helping with the customization of the
So
client outreach.
it's we're fairly new to using it, but
Mm,
I've been really impressed getting in with it because it has a whole social media suite.
mm-hmm.
So LinkedIn, Facebook, so your Meta and LinkedIn, it can, gives you a whole database of pre-prepared social media post. You can bring in your own media if you have a photo of, the new hire that you have. Hey, well, welcome Bob. Bob's the new, to the team, and here's 5 fun facts about Bob, and you
Yeah.
can, share that to all of your social media posts instead of like I use Canva.
Hmm.
It does take more time, gives you more flexibility, but you're having to find your own images. You're having to, do your font. You're having to type the message. You're having to format it specifically for Instagram, a certain ratio, and then aspect ratio, and
Yep.
then for Facebook, and then so in this business, because it is service intensive and we are trying to still give a high level of service, but also scale, having these little shortcuts really, really help.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're able to speak on that a little bit. It sounds like a great tool, especially for agencies, trying to be a little bit more efficient and reach out at the right time. So I'm really glad that's working for you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And one of the things I think, just real quick before we move on,
Hmm.
is they actually integrate with your Outlook. So all the emails are actually coming from your individual Outlook or from your individual email platform, whatever you
Hmm.
may use, versus other ones may use, and I can actually set it up for each agent, goes to
Yeah.
each of their clients, even though it is a batch email sometimes. It can be a personal email, but if it is a batch email for the season or for a holiday office closure or something like that, they feel like they're getting an email personally typed to them. You put your email signature on there for each agent. And it all pulls over from your CRM system basically, but it
Yeah.
looks super sharp. Yeah, it looks like you literally took the time and they plug in like Mr. And they have like in parentheses what, they plug in their first name from your CRM system. So yeah, I really like it. So yeah.
From an agency owner standpoint, I mean, like you said, you can set it up for your agents. I mean, you can have the best agents in the world, but um, making sure everybody kind of does things at the level that you want it to be done
Mhm.
to hold that standard is important. And to have a tool like that where you can automate some things and the client relationship stays there no matter what. Maybe someone's having a bad day and forgets about something or whatever, right? So it's a pretty cool tool. I'm so glad that some of these great things are more accessible for businesses like yours, and not just the big guys anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I kind of what you're saying though, it is really melding, not what you're saying, what I was saying. It's melding that personal, like I was saying at the beginning, personal and the kind of automation
Yep,
together. It's one of those tools that makes that more possible.
absolutely. Yeah. A quick question. So, if you had 60 seconds to talk to a first-time insurance buyer, um, what would you want them to hear? Like, if there's something that this one thing you usually tell people, or just someone in general.
Sure. Um, be wary of sales. Well, insurance agents that seem to focus more on sales. Um,
Mm,
they're pushy, they're aggressive, insurance should be a long-term relationship. You should
Hmm.
really, if there is an agent that will really sit down and talk to you, that means they're invested in you. That means that they want you to understand, and that's what you want. Someone that has your best interests in mind. They're not just going from cold call to cold call or client to client. So finding an agent that will take the time to talk to you, explain things to you, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. In insurance, new clients are just as important as current clients.
Hmm.
So I think that's what I would say. Look for, in my also opinion, an independent agent. I may be biased, but an independent agent because they can give you more options. So those are the two big criteria I'd look for.
Maybe I am too, only by choice. I don't really. I've just always liked going to independent agents. I just feel more comfortable with it personally. The relationship makes sense in my mind. Um, Personally, I still have friends and even family that don't really understand, captive versus, can you explain that a little bit, maybe to someone that doesn't really understand that situation?
Yeah. So by the way, I've got family members that are captive insurance agents and they've been agents for a long time. And there's a lot of loyalty there. I get it. But they only have a captive agent is someone that's captive. They can only sell one company. There's typically your big national brands, your Farmers, your Allstate, your State Farm. Those are the big ones. When you call them, typically they're only allowed to offer that company, no one else. Now, there may be some other examples out there, but that's the main distinction. Captive agents can only offer one company. An independent agent typically has access to multiple companies, and that typically gives clients better pricing, more options, more competition, better coverages, and then those agents aren't necessarily beholden to a company. So if there's something that that company's not doing right, they're not taking care of a claim like they're supposed to, they can't necessarily fire me, right? So I can get a little aggressive if I need to for my client. Now I don't like to get aggressive, but I mean sometimes this is what it takes. But
Yeah.
um, I'm more. My dad used to say it this way, right? An independent agent is kind of the buffer to make sure that the clients are being fair to the insurance companies, but the insurance companies are being fair to the clients. And that's where I think a lot of the value comes. So when you go to a captive, you're kind of handcuffed because that's your employer. So you can only be so aggressive or so pushy before maybe you cross the line and maybe so you're limited. So that's why I like independent agents. That's why I like independent insurance agencies. I wouldn't run a I wouldn't buy or run a captive insurance agency if it was up to me. So
I love it. Yeah. Um, I feel the same way. And that's why I love doing this podcast. It's dispelling some of these things that I think a lot of people should know. Um, some I'm sure do, and they've heard it before, but I really appreciate Sean, you coming on and
yeah.
helping me out, educate, and explain a little bit about yourself. Before we leave, is there anything else that you might want to say or talk about that we didn't cover?
Um, I I think that we've covered most of the basics. Let's see. I would also say I may be biased again, but if you find an insurance agency that's independent, to add to the two caveats I've said before, someone with experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know the only way to learn is to make mistakes and time, but if you're going to trust someone with your home or auto, typically, some of your largest assets, protecting them, help you protect them, you want to work with someone that's been doing it for a while. So when I started with my father and I was in the insurance agency, just starting out, no experience. My father at that point already had 30 plus years of experience. And he was always there to, if I didn't know the answer to a question, hey, dad, hey, pops. So I think finding someone that also has been a kind of a pillar of the community someone who just has that longevity of doing a good job. I think that's also really important. But yeah, I think we've covered most of it. Yeah.
I can't argue with that, Sean. It makes a lot of sense to me to have that kind of help and then grow up around the industry. I could see why your agency's been around for a long time and why it's surely going places here even further. So thanks again, Sean, for coming
Yeah.
on. It's a great conversation. Maybe we'll figure out something else to talk about next time if you want. So thanks again.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you.